How's it going, everyone? It's been a while. I know I haven't done a vlog in a long time. I had a baby, and I also started and then rapidly ended a job with Machinima. That's a long story in itself. But yeah, I've just been really busy. But something has pulled me out, and I'm going to try to do a little bit more of these vlogs moving forward. But this one's currently on franchising in the LCS, and sort of a format that I've been playing around with. So for anyone that doesn't know what's happening, League of Legends North America and Europe runs on the LCS, which is the League Championship Series. And the way that league works, there's 10 teams with a amateur or challenger league underneath that. And then at the end of the season, or at the end of each split, the bottom tier teams can get knocked out or get their spot taken away by one of the challenger teams or one of the amateur teams, sort of in a promotion. They call it a promotional tournament, but if you're more familiar with StarCraft, it's like an up-down system. So it's an interesting system. It keeps a lot of teams on their toes. It helps with sandbagging, or with throwing matches, or people just kind of in there for brand recognition. It keeps the competitive spirit very high in both the Challenger League and the LCS. But there's a lot of problems with it. And so the thing that just happened recently, this has always been kind of an issue in a discussion that I've had with some people, that we needed to move towards franchising. And I'll get more into that in a section. But what brings this up is we just had the summer split just ended, and we just had the promotional tournament for the North American LCS, and as well as Europe. And so the two teams that were kicked out of the LCS were pretty big name teams. So NRG was kicked out of the North American LCS. That's the team that's owned by the Maloof brothers, Shaq, Alex Rodriguez, and Jimmy Rollins. So some pretty big sports names there. For anyone that doesn't know the Maloof brothers, they're the owners of they were the owners of the Sacramento Kings and the LA Kings. So for basketball and hockey respectively. And so the general thing is, well, and then also for Europe, Schalke 04 was also kicked out of the European LCS, and Schalke 04 is the soccer team. So some huge investors were kicked out of that league, and it's unfortunate to see, because structurally speaking and from an organizational standpoint, they were doing a great job, and I having talked to a lot of people around them, they were doing a great job structurally, and it does scare away big sponsors when you can lose your spot that quickly. And so this has led a lot of people to start questioning whether or not we need to move away from the promotion system or the up-down system and more towards franchising, meaning that the teams are locked in, they have their spots available, or they have their spots, and then they choose when they sell or get out, right? There's a couple of bad things about this, and the things that people are bringing up are it breeds lethargy, meaning that, like, if a team has its spot, they can then sandbag, or they can then just kind of not be as competitive because they already know that they have their spot, which I agree with. I think the competitive aspect is extremely important. And it also lowers the drive for the challenger scene, because then at that point, what are they playing for, right? There's nothing really to play for other than a challenger cup or whatever. Not too appealing there, when you can actually just play for a spot in the pros. It's different mechanic. Franchising also makes it so that it's impossible for other organizations to break into it unless they pay a ton of money for those spots. And that's not necessarily, well, I'll get into my opinion of it in a little bit. I'm just trying to set this up for you. And yeah, so the idea of franchising, where teams don't lose their spot, where these are the 10 teams that owns these positions, much like how the NBA, the NFL, the Major League Baseball, how they all function, where these 32 teams in case of the NFL, they have these spots, the owners own them, it is that team, and the only thing you're really changing from time to time is staff or players, right? At least for long periods of time. So my opinion of it, I think we do need franchising. I think it's extremely important. If you want to see both sides of the argument, actually, Monte Cristo just did a great video on his channel about it, about the pros of franchising and why it's needed. And on the other side, we have Carmack, who, if anyone doesn't know who Carmack is the original esports journalist, or one of them at least. Extremely great guy, runs ESL. And so he wrote an article on, I think, Tumblr, and he wrote an article essentially saying that why franchising is bad for the LCS. And there's these two contrasting arguments. There's also a great video by Richard Lewis that you can go ahead and watch, and you can get a great sense of the other arguments. And also, please, I do have a pretty solid solution, I think, in my opinion. Please let me know in the comments whether or not you agree. But pretty much, I think you need franchising for a couple of reasons. I think it brings in new sponsorships, or bigger sponsorships. Again, it's extremely disconcerting for major organizations when they're spending millions and millions of dollars invested into these teams, and then they all of a sudden lose their spot, right? It scares a lot of big sponsors from doing that. It keeps the money threshold of what's possible. You can't have big plans as an organization if you could potentially lose your spot, right? Like, so I'm not going to give player A long-term deal with a lot of money involved. Even though he may deserve it, we could possibly lose our spot in that time. So I'm not going to give him that money, assuming that I'm going to have that spot. And same goes for sponsors as well. I'm not going to sponsor this team and give them a long-term contract if they're just going to get kicked out of the league soon, right? So it allows for more money, more long-term plans. I think the player security, team security, things like that. Now, the system that I'm proposing, or the system that I really kind of thought out, was based on the baseball system of the minor leagues. So for anyone who doesn't know, baseball, Major League Baseball is run in kind of a tiered system. They have what's called a farm league system. So you have the Major League Baseball, which is your pro league. You have your AA and AAAs, which are like your minor leagues that you go ahead and train players up through, and they move up and down throughout that system. Now, the way that this works is, the way this would work in esports is you would maybe have, or in the LCS in particular, you would have your 10 teams. And the thing is, going back a little bit, backtracking, the idea of the LCS, especially the North American LCS, the Europe to a certain extent, but the North American LCS, we have it's probably, in my opinion, the biggest branding powerhouse in all of esports. And I mean this in the sense of, like, the league itself, the North American LCS, the amount of brand recognition for esports that's in that league is ridiculous. You have TSM, CLG, Liquid. You have, sorry, I'm drawing a blank. You also have Envious in there as well. Those are 4 huge powerhouse organizations. You have Immortals, which is coming up strong. You have Echo Fox in there that's coming up very strong. And you just have some unbelievable branding recognition there for anyone to come in, and it's somewhere you really want to be. So the way that it kind of functions, going back to the farm league, is you'd have your 10 teams, and underneath those teams they would own or partner with challenger teams. So you'd have, right now you have teams like Cloud9 that have Cloud9 Challenger. You have teams like Team Liquid, who has Team Liquid Academy. They have their own individual teams, but I'm talking more in the sense of completely different organizations, where you have TSM maybe partnering with Team Dragon Knights, or something to that extent, right? And then they become a subsidiary of that organization. In terms of the way the LCS is structured, I'm not saying that TSM is going to buy Team Dragon Knights or whatever. I'm just saying that for the sake of this farm league system, they would partner up with these teams, sign deals to partner up, right? What this allows for is sort of the pro teams to not take responsibility, but to help grow and help facilitate these challenger teams. Meaning that they would help share sponsorships, share revenue. So Riot would give the pro teams a little more money. They would help kind of facilitate that partnership of having these challenger teams underneath them. It would also help training for helping less shadiness happening in esports. So you have a lot of shady organizations out there. And so helping train staff, get players experience, things like that, training regiments, things of that nature, help grow those smaller organizations or younger organizations. And then on the flip side, the pro teams would get the benefit of being able to use those teams as farm teams. You know, players, coaches, all that stuff can move freely up and down between these two partnered organizations, right? Wouldn't require any kind of contract switching, wouldn't require any kind of like trades or anything like that, or anything like it. They would just be able to swap them on the fly, which makes it better for everyone, at least in my opinion. Then you have a subsystem where players aren't sub, they're just drop down a tier to the Challenger League for like a week and then can move back and forth. It makes it a very flowy system. And you can maybe do it with where a pro team, an LCS team, partners with maybe 2 challenger teams. So each LCS team has 2 challenger teams underneath them, and it works in that sort of system where they're helping with infrastructure and training and practice and revenue, and then the pro teams are helping with players and growing those players and things like that. What this does is it allows the LCS teams to keep that growth, keep that player growth, and keep the scene, the amateur scene growing and active. At the same time, it allows them to use players and experiment a little bit more. And then for the challenger teams, it allows them to grow, allows them to have their own autonomy and make their own decisions. Where, you know, it's different if, say, like if I'm an amateur coach, obviously the best chance for me to grow is to work with an LCS team. But working under an LCS team, I won't be able to make the big decisions that I would if I was the head coach of a challenger team. This way I can stay a head coach, but I still have the mentorship of, you know, the pro team above me that's going ahead and helping me doing that. But I can go ahead and make decisions and grow in that way as well. And also helps with revenue sharing. So I think like that's a good, healthy solution where it keeps both teams active and wanting to do something, but at the same time allows that facilitation to happen where we have franchising, we're able to get bigger sponsors, more money, and more stability. And I think that's very important. But yeah, that's sort of my idea and where the conclusion that I came to. But please let me know if you guys have anything different, if you have any different ideas. But thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time.